Hi, I'm Lindsay Boccardo. I've been coaching generations in the workforce for over a decade, and I'm going to share with you today one of the secret tools that I have found that helps keep your high-achieving talent. That's right, it's a personal growth plan. Now, my first growth plan looked probably a little bit different than most of yours. It was hitting things with sticks. How hard can I hit things? How loud? And how fast? That was my first personal growth plan. I wonder what yours looked like. Now, this season of my life right out of college, I loved it. I was playing with my band across the country. But you know what breaks most bands up, don't you? It's not the weird posters. It's not the live shows or selling enough merch. It's simply that you're bringing a bunch of people together who don't have the soft skills they need. Now, you could blame this on our leader because she wasn't the best leader. Okay, she didn't listen. She didn't provide feedback. There wasn't clarity. I got to be honest, though, that leader was me. I'm the reason our band wasn't able to stay together long term. And when we broke up, I said, okay, I know the patterns in music. I understand patterns of how to write a good song, what makes a good song, but what are the patterns that make a good team? I put my drumsticks down and I went back to school and I studied professional coaching. I studied how do we bring teams together, keep everyone connected and growing and full of hope. And I started to create programs just like these. And this is what I found. The common thread, the pattern through everything is this. Humans want to grow. They want to have clarity about how to grow. They want to feel safe in their relationships at work. They want to learn more about themselves so that they can express who they are more clearly. And that's what I found throughout my time, whether playing in a band or coaching and speaking about generations, this theme. Us humans, we want to grow. We are more like houseplants than computers. We want water, sunlight, fresh air. We want to continue to spread and stretch ourselves. And that's why a personal growth program is so important. Now, it's not just creating a program for program's sake. The reason that this became such a theme in my work as a generational coach is because of the shifting definition of leadership. Let me show this to you. When we look at the definition of leadership in the last few decades, in the last 100 years, we find this curious shift happening. Look back to the 1920s with me. Leadership 100 years ago was the ability to impress the will of the leader on those being led, to induce obedience, respect, loyalty, cooperation. That sounds like a blast. Can you imagine writing that in one of your job postings? Come work for us. We will induce obedience upon you. No thanks. Now fast forward with me all the way to the years 2000s, the years we live in now. Leadership is now a process of influencing others to understand and agree about what needs to be done, how to do it, and it's the process of facilitating individual and collective efforts to accomplish shared objectives. Whew, that is a mouthful. Leadership looks very different than it did 100 years ago. It's almost the opposite. It's now about influencing others, have them think through the process, and ultimately agree with you. This is how I like to say it. Leadership acumen is now measured by your ability to transform a diverse group of humans into a cohesive, effective, and compassionate team. That's our job together. It's not easy. It's probably the hardest to be a leader today in today's world. One thing that's come up in the last few years, and I wonder if you have managed and dealt with this too, are leaders saying, hey, it's not my job to teach you how to be a professional. It's not my job to be your therapist. You need to work that out on your own and then come work here and produce. I've heard that so many times, and it seems like there's this kind of fine line, between being a mental health provider and being a leader or a manager. And I hear you. I think this is a tension that we are riding. We are in the middle of a mental health crisis in many ways post-COVID. And so this conversation is coming up all the time. And so my question for all of us to consider is, what came first, the chicken or the egg? Which one are we supposed to spend more time with employees and develop them and grow them from eggs to little chickens, chicklets to big chickens? Or are they supposed to come in the door fully formed chickens ready to lay eggs? And I think sometimes we get in this weird situation, this cross conversation where we say, we shouldn't have to teach that to you. And the employee says, well, I don't know how to do it. Well, I shouldn't have to teach to you. Well, the longer I don't know how to self-advocate, the longer I don't have self-awareness, the more difficult your job is. That's the catch. So what if both are true? What if employees are supposed to take responsibility for their well-being, for their self-awareness, for their self-advocacy, and it's our job to teach them how to do that and set the tone? Is this making sense? Jump in the chat and share what you think as you're processing this. How does this hit you? I'm curious to hear. Here's what I've learned and what I've said to other generations as we've worked together. I've said this. I hate to tell you, but there are no fairy godmothers coming. There's no one coming to see you fully, to shape you, to give you the next steps. And this is really hard, especially for young employees who have invested their time, energy, and money in college. And throughout their life, if you think about it, between 5 and 21 years of age, through that whole process, people have been telling you, here's the next step. Here's what you need to do to get an A. This is how you succeed in college. This is how you succeed in high school. They have rules of the game locked into their mind. And when they break out into the working world, they're looking for their next professor. They're looking for their next mentor. And it's kind of shocking to find out there is no fairy godmother who's going to come and guide your path and make it easy. But what we can do, what you and I can do, is create an environment for growth, self-understanding, self-awareness. That's our job as leaders. And I'm telling you, if you don't think it's your job, that's the challenge. Is it's going to end up costing your team. It's going to cost more energy and time to repair growth when it doesn't happen than to set leaders up, young leaders up for growth on the sooner side. So part of this program, part of creating a personal growth plan, is helping everyone acclimate and keep growing in the work environment that we live in right now. So let's talk about it. What goes in this personal growth plan? There's a million things that you could put in. I'm going to give you the 3 that I focus on all the time. Everything boils down to these 3 areas of personal growth: self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-advocacy. What do I mean by that? Let's jump in. Self-awareness. Let me move my head. Let me float over here. There we go. Self-awareness is our ability to monitor ourselves without judgment. What am I thinking right now? That was a weird meeting. I'm feeling uncomfortable. Okay. That's exactly what self-awareness is. It's understanding our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions, and seeing how they're interconnected in everything that we do. Usually I call it spilling the tea. How do you learn to spill the tea on yourself, to spend time journaling, understanding your thoughts and how they lead to how you feel every day, and ultimately how they make you act? This is great for remote employees too. Even encouraging them each day to spend 5 minutes journaling out their thoughts, their emotions, and their actions. My life is not going as planned. Oh, okay, well, that wouldn't feel very good, would it? So what do I need? Well, I'm feeling grief and sadness, and I'm noticing I'm wasting a lot of time. Oh, okay. Even taking the moment to see yourself, to see how you're thinking and acting, this is key. When somebody first comes into the workplace, you might find, or even if they've been there for a while, they expect everyone else to see and understand them before they do themselves. And you know what happens when this is the case? When somebody doesn't have a lot of self-awareness, instead of riding the wave of emotions into shore, instead of understanding what's happening to them, they send everybody else on their waves with them. You see, for most of life, we will be having experiences that send us on an emotional wave. We're going to have them in our life. There's no way around them. I don't think it's appropriate or healthy to tell people, put your emotions in a basket and get them at 5 o'clock. That's just not how we work. But if we lack self-awareness, we end up looking for everyone else to ride the wave with us. That's really our job and our need to see ourselves and understand. So this first piece is, in a personal growth plan, setting up an opportunity for folks to journal. Even when you start your team meetings, saying, hey, before we start our meeting this week, we're going to spend some time in TEA. So get your TEA journal out, brand it with your company's brand, and give everybody time to self-reflect. What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And how am I behaving? These are questions they don't even have to share with other people. It's just taking a little time to listen to what's going on for you. That's the first element of creating a personal growth plan, creating a cadence, a regular expectation that we self-reflect and look at how we're thinking, feeling, and acting towards others. The second piece is self-acceptance. Self-acceptance is one layer deeper. It's our ability to have a kind and compassionate relationship with ourselves after we observe and reflect on our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Self-acceptance. Think about this. It's not enough to know what's going on for you. You've got to take that next level and say, I'm going to be okay. This is also where we get tripped up at work and we spend a lot of time, is even if you know what's going on with yourself, sometimes you're looking for somebody else to regulate you, to accept you, to see you. That's very hard to do for most of us when we're in our own world getting our work done, especially if we're working remote. So self-acceptance, our ability to have kind and compassionate relationship with ourselves, is huge. Here are some phrases that I teach my clients to use on themselves. When you realize, ooh, I'm low on productivity, I'm feeling some grief, I'm not feeling like myself today. Okay, it makes perfect sense. I'm having these thoughts given the situation. Or maybe I'm not lazy, I must be overwhelmed or confused. Maybe I'm afraid. Okay, I'm overwhelmed. Okay, what can I do to wiggle out of overwhelm? That's really the employee's job that we end up spending a lot of time doing as leaders. But what if we train them how to be self-aware when they're overwhelmed and how to take care of themselves? How about this? I recognize I need to reset my thinking. I need some support in this area. These are all phrases that you can learn, that your employees can learn to help themselves when they're feeling stuck, frustrated, agitated. This is the piece that when we miss it, when we don't take time to be self-aware and self-accept what's going on, we tend to poison the well of others. We tend to create drama triangles because we go to somebody else, asking them to save us, asking them to see the problem with so-and-so, instead of taking the time and going, oh, okay, I know what's happening here. Okay, I can see why I'm upset. So these first two, self-awareness and self-acceptance, are huge when you think about creating a personal growth plan where people want to stay and keep evolving. I'll tell you, when I first started coaching, I would notice that high achievers would come to me and complain. Usually they'd complain about their leader, about not feeling like they have opportunities, about not feeling like they're seen and understood. And when we started to practice self-awareness and self-acceptance, a lot of that tension went down. It started to dissipate because they realized, oh my gosh, no one is coming for me. I need to do this for myself. My boss is not my fairy godmother. No one is going to see and accept me like I can see and accept me. And this is so important because when our teammates are under a lot of stress and they look like this, sometimes we don't always know, do I really want to enter into that? I'm not sure what's going on with this person right now, and I wonder if they know what's going on. In a moment like this, when you walk up and you see your teammate overwhelmed, instead of getting into it with them, even be able to say, have the common language, how are you? It looks like, from where I'm sitting, it looks like you might be overwhelmed. I wonder where your thoughts and emotions are at today. Maybe taking a few minutes. Do you want to go air out, take a few minutes and just do steps 1 and 2, spill the tea and do some self-acceptance, and let's come back and talk about it. Give somebody this language, this understanding that it's their job to do that. And you will see that most people want to be responsible for themselves. They just never have learned how. No one teaches this. Okay, so what's the third piece here? We've talked about self-awareness, self-acceptance, and the third one is self-advocacy. And I train everyone I work with in a simple method to help layer in all three of these. I call it ta-da. This is the magic trick at work if you're trying to help folks grow and self-advocate. We are wildly resourceful and we are able to work through almost any issues that come our way. The challenge is pausing long enough to be able to communicate them authentically. We often skip over self-acceptance. We move quickly to a solution, and this is where we get stuck oversharing or undersharing with our team. So how do we balance being authentic to ourselves and our experience while also communicating in a professional manner? You see, my definition of professionalism is this. I've signed up, I've created a social contract to accomplish objectives with this organization. And it is my primary responsibility to self-regulate so that I can do the objective I've signed up for. That's how I think about professionalism. It doesn't mean I don't have feelings. It doesn't mean that I don't matter. It means that my job is to learn how to regulate myself so I can show up and perform. Now, can't you see with your leadership why it would be important to talk about this? Why not create preventative opportunities for folks to learn these skills so that when they come to you, they're clear in what they're looking for and what they need? That's why we created the ta-da method. So you can see the first two pieces of ta-da. Tune into your own body and mind and accept what you hear and feel. You've already done those two. We've already talked about those in this personal growth program. After that, what I have found as a coach, coaching hundreds, thousands of folks when they are feeling stressed out and not happy with work, I have found that once you go through the first part of ta-da, just the T and the A, a lot of problems are easy to solve. Once we feel validated and understood, once we know what's going on with ourselves, we're able to actually be constructive. This is where we decide if we want to involve others and then ask for what you need. And I train folks to be clear on the problem and what you're asking of your team. So what do you need? I need this because this is the problem and this is what I need from you. Once we're able to regulate, to be aware of ourselves, then we can decide, now, is this a problem that I want to pull other people in on? Or is this a problem that I can solve right now? The ta-da method helps folks self-advocate when it's appropriate. So you can imagine when you learn these three skills, self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-advocacy, you're much more likely in your organization, you're much more likely to be seen, heard, and understood. And isn't this one of the top reasons that folks leave? Because they feel misunderstood, they don't feel like they're growing, right? They don't like their manager, but their manager doesn't know. They've never really sat down and talked about expectations or how things aren't going correctly. They've never had a feedback experience. So when I think about the hidden retention lever, we pull this as soon as somebody comes in an organization. We do this as part of onboarding. We do this as part of a leadership university. And I've done this in organizations from restaurants to dealerships. I've done this in all different environments because I found over and over, it doesn't matter what type of work it is. Humans want to grow. They want to grow and they need an avenue and they kind of need permission to do that. The other phenomenal outcome when you have a personal growth plan in place and when you have everyone going through similar training is that they have similar language to talk about what they're learning and how they're growing. I do want to share with you some common pitfalls that I find. Here they are. Lack of clear objectives and expectations for participants. Why am I doing this? Is this connected to my performance? Is this just extra? I would encourage you not to tie this to their performance or use this in a punitive way. I would create this program as an add-on, an added bonus. See who signs up to take it. The second is lack of resources to bring the program to life. It can be hard sometimes. In our mind's eye, we think, oh, this is going to be great, and ultimately this will save us time and energy and extra meetings. But it does take resources to set up well and to run in a way where folks are being held accountable. There's a cadence and a rhythm to it. The third pitfall: leaders believe employees should learn soft skills on their own time. You might still have some leaders who do not see the advantage and the strategy to teaching your employees self-awareness, self-acceptance, and self-advocacy. So that might be a hurdle that you find yourself going through. How about this one? Lack of integration into current systems. You have maybe never done a program like this. You've never created a personal growth plan for individuals, so you're not even sure how this would fit in. And without a place to kind of drop this into, it can be hard to get off the ground. The last piece, which might be surprising, is just too much content. We're trying to do everything. We're trying to do every emotional intelligence skill, every communication skill, everything under the sun in this program. And it gets so big and heavy, it never gets off the ground. That's why we stick to these 3 areas. So here's some questions to ask as you are strategically thinking through how you could bring this to your organization. First, what's in it for the employee? How can we talk about this in a way where our employees see this as a benefit and not just another thing to do? How about this? What resources do we need if we tried this in the past? What worked and what didn't? Are leaders bought in? If they are bought in, that's half the battle. Here's some other questions to ask as you think about the strategy for how you'll bring this into your org. Where are there natural pause points in your quarterly calendar? Where do you naturally pause, and how can you make the most of that and insert this type of plan where you're having conversations around it? How about this? When do employees need the most support? You might notice that at certain times of the year on cadence, they need more support than others. When I work with restaurants, we find that summer is too busy. They don't have time to continue to build a personal growth plan, and especially around the holidays in the restaurant world, that's also a tough time. So we design personal growth plans around other initiatives in the business. And this last one, how can we keep this simple? This doesn't have to be complicated. These 3 skills will save you and your team time and energy in the long run, and the more simple it is, the more memorable it is. If you can write it on the back of a napkin, that's a great personal growth plan. Here's my challenge. For each one of these areas, see how you could fold in a KPI. Think about how could we measure behavior around these. So for the first piece, self-awareness, just knowing that all my employees spend 5 minutes each morning filling out their TEA chart before they come in, or before I start a meeting, we spend 5 minutes reflecting on our thoughts, emotions, and actions of the day or of the week. This is how we measure if we're making progress. Are we regularly journaling? Are we regularly spending time growing? Self-acceptance, asking everyone to come up with a phrase that helps them accept their shortcomings or challenges or difficulties, and ask them how much they're using it. Start to measure our self-talk. How often am I positive with myself, and how often am I kind of rude and harsh with myself? Even asking in your weekly feedback sessions or your check-ins, ask, how is your self-talk? Are you in a spot where you are feeling hopeful and confident, or are you in a spot where you just feel so overwhelmed and frustrated with yourself you can't move forward? Start measuring and having these types of conversations. There's ways to do this that aren't super invasive but become normal inside of your organization. And for the third one, self-advocacy, there are plenty of ways to create an environment of self-advocacy. One thing I've encouraged folks to do is to build a life team. So when I'm self-advocating, when I see I have needs, maybe it's not even the job of my team to help me with them. I need a mentor. I need people outside of my industry to help me grow. So one area that you can help employees grow in is to simply help them think through who do they need on their life team. Start to build out a support wrap around them. It doesn't have to be you, and it doesn't have to be a direct teammate. But when you start to invest in the personal growth of your employees, everybody wins. So the next time that you hear a dissatisfaction rumble, when you hear somebody say, I can't find my potential here, I'm not fitting in, this isn't the right position for me, the next time you hear that, ask yourself this: are we giving our employees the tools they need to continue to grow personally? They can only show up and grow as fast as their self-awareness will allow them. Thank you so much for your time. Feel free to email me with any questions. I'd love to stay connected.